My name is Lindsay Stewart and I'm 32 years old. Last weekend at a family party, a single sentence I whispered to my sister turned the whole night upside down. Within minutes, whispers spread, faces changed, and I realized just how quickly trust can crumble when money's on the table. By the end of the night, I wasn't sure which was louder, the music or the sound of my own heartbeat. Before I tell you what happened and why my phone wouldn't stop ringing the next morning, I want to know what time is it where you are, and which city are you listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And then, someone made a move I'll never forget, one that would change the way I looked at my own family forever. Before that fateful weekend, my life in Albuquerque was as predictable as the New Mexico sunsets, beautiful from afar, but scorching up close. I worked as an elementary school teacher at a local public school, spending my days wrangling second graders through math lessons and recess chaos. My paycheck barely stretched to cover rent on a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood near the Rio Grande, where I'd brew cheap coffee each morning and check my bank app for overdraft alerts. I'd drive my 12-year-old Toyota Corolla to work, praying it wouldn't break down again after the last repair bill wiped out my savings. Family made everything more complicated. My parents, James and Susan Stewart, divorced when I was 12, turning our home into a battleground of custody fights and blame. James, a civil engineer with a steady job, remarried Pamela Hart, a marketing consultant who loved expensive wines and weekend getaways, but never quite embraced me as family. Susan, who managed a small boutique downtown, found stability with Roger Bennett, a real estate agent who guarded his wallet like a fortress. My older brother Thomas, 36, put on a show of success with his tech startup pitches, but he was always calling for loans that turned into gifts. My younger sister Danielle, 28, was the star top of her class, married to Mark Taylor, a surgeon living in a gated community with their kids and a life that looked perfect on social media. The aunts added their own flavor. Aunt Diane Moore, Susan's younger sister, was the genuine one, a retired librarian on a fixed income in a modest condo filled with secondhand books and herbal teas. She battled heart problems but always made time for calls or cards, never asking for anything. On the other side was Aunt Karen Wright, James's older sister, who married into money and never let us forget it, critiquing my career choices at holidays. Her daughter, Emily. My cousin acted friendly during visits, sharing gossip over coffee, but I later discovered she fed every detail back to Aunt Karen like a personal informant. Extended relationships were just as tangled. I'd given Thomas $3,000 last year for what he called a business emergency, only to find out it funded a ski trip he posted online. Danielle borrowed $1,500 for her baby's nursery, swearing she'd pay after her promotion, but 5 months later, silence. James needed $2,000 for home repairs after a storm, and I sent it from my credit card, then saw photos of him and Pamela cruising the Caribbean. Susan hit me up for $500 to cover a boutique shortfall, promising quick repayment that vanished when Roger bought new golf gear. These weren't isolated incidents, they formed a pattern that left me jaded and constantly calculating who might ask next. My best friend, Christina Long, a nurse I met in college, was the one constant. She'd listen over wine at her place, saying things like, "Lindsay, you can't keep being their bank," and help me see I wasn't crazy for feeling used. At work, colleague Brian Kelly had a subtle crush, bringing me lunch or offering to cover playground duty, but I kept it friendly. He was kind, but I wasn't ready for more complications. My small indulgence was lottery tickets bought every Friday at John Adams's corner store near school. John, the owner in his 60s, knew my routine and chatted about weather or local news. Family mocked it. Susan said it was a fool's game. Thomas joked I should just give him the money. James lectured on statistics. I had dreams, though, traveling to the Grand Canyon without worrying about costs, clearing student loans that lingered like shadows, maybe getting a certification to teach higher grades. But at 32, with persistent credit debt from family loans and monthly budgeting down to the penny, those felt like distant mirages. I'd compare prices at grocery stores, skip social invites to save gas, and master the art of smiling through stress, wondering if I'd ever break the cycle. Little did I know, a simple stop at John's store on my birthday would shatter that routine in ways I couldn't imagine. That birthday Friday started like any other bad day at school. A student had a meltdown during reading time, parents emailed complaints about grading, and I spent lunch grading papers instead of eating. Brian Kelly noticed my stress and said, "Lindsay, you look like you need a break. Want to join me for coffee after?" I appreciated the gesture but waved it off, too exhausted to think about his obvious crush. After the bell, I headed straight to John Adams's corner store, my weekly ritual. John greeted me with his usual nod and asked, "Tough week." "The usual tickets." I nodded, handing over $10, but on a whim, I asked for one extra and chose the numbers myself instead of quick pick. John glanced at the numbers I picked: my birth month and day, Susan's birthday, James's, Aunt Diane's, and Christina's, and smiled oddly, saying, "Those look familiar. You know, your grandma used similar ones back in the day. She had stories about family inheritances that got lost in the shuffle." I chuckled, thinking it was just small talk, but his words stuck with me as I drove home. That evening, I treated myself to takeout from a local Mexican spot and opened a bottle of wine Christina had gifted. The lottery drawing aired at 8 p.m., but I barely paid attention at first, scrolling through family photos on my phone, Danielle's perfect kids, Thomas's fake success posts, Aunt Karen's luxury vacation pics. Then the numbers flashed. First matched my birth date, then Susan's, James's, Aunt Diane's, Christina's. My heart skipped as the last one lined up. I froze wine glass halfway to my mouth and checked the ticket against the screen 3 times, hands shaking so badly I dropped my phone. No way, this couldn't be real. The website confirmed it. I was the sole winner of $50 million. After taxes, it'd be around $30 million, a number that made my head spin for someone who'd celebrated a $20 win last year like it was Christmas. Sleep evaded me that night. Instead, I paced the apartment, searching online for stories of lottery winners. What I found terrified me. Families ripped apart by greed, relatives crawling out with sob stories, winners bankrupt and miserable within years. One article described it as the fastest way to lose everything you value. As dawn broke over the Sandia Mountains, I made my choice. I'd claim the prize, but tell no one. Not Susan, not James, not even Christina yet. I needed time to plan, to build protections before anyone could turn me into their personal cash machine. The idea of testing their loyalty started forming then, but first I had to secure the money without a trace. The next morning, after discovering the win, I called in sick to school for the first time in months, citing a migraine that wasn't entirely a lie. My head was pounding from the overnight whirlwind. I scheduled an appointment with David Cole, a financial attorney specializing in large windfalls and estate planning, whose office was in a sleek downtown Albuquerque building. As I sat in the waiting room, clutching my purse with the ticket inside, dressed in my everyday clothes, I felt like a fraud among the suited clients. David greeted me warmly, a man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes, and asked, "What can I do for you today, Lindsay?" I took a deep breath and slid the ticket across his desk, explaining the situation without naming the amount at first. His eyes widened slightly as he verified it. Then he leaned back and nodded professionally. "Congratulations, but I see why you're here quietly. In New Mexico, winners can claim through a trust to keep identities private." Over the next hour, David outlined the process: setting up a blind trust to anonymize the claim, handling federal and state taxes that would reduce it to about $30 million, and building a diversified investment plan with stocks, bonds, and real estate to grow it safely. He warned, "The biggest pitfall is telling family too soon. They'll see you as a resource, not a person. I've seen it destroy relationships overnight." I nodded, relieved my instincts were right, and we discussed immediate steps: wiring funds to secure accounts, avoiding lifestyle changes that could raise suspicions. Leaving his office with a folder of documents, I felt a strange mix of power and isolation. The money was mine, but I couldn't celebrate it. Back home, I continued my routine, driving the old Toyota to the grocery store, complaining about bills in texts with Christina to maintain the facade. That evening, I met Christina for dinner at a casual spot near Old Town, and after some small talk, I shared the partial truth about the win and my growing idea to test the family. "I'm thinking of creating a scenario to see who'd help me if I needed it," I said, watching her reaction. Christina raised an eyebrow, concerned. "Lindsay, that sounds manipulative. Why not just have honest conversations?" I explained the history of one-sided help, how I'd been the giver but doubted reciprocity. She sighed, but understood, saying, "If you're set on this, let's make it believable." We spent the next hour practicing. I'd start with a fake $1 million ticket at the upcoming family party to gauge greed, then follow up by pretending to need $4,000 for medical bills and rent after the loss. Christina helped refine details, mention a sudden company audit at school for realism, even though I was a teacher. I made notes on predictions. Thomas would promise, big, but ghost. Danielle would cite kids' expenses. James would lecture on responsibility, but might slip about the inheritance grandma left that mysteriously vanished. Susan would deflect to others. Aunt Karen would judge. Emily would pretend to help, then report back Pamela, and Roger would outright refuse. As we parted, the party loomed like a storm on the horizon, my nerves buzzing with anticipation of what it might reveal. With the plan solidified and the fake ticket printed to look authentic, I spent the days leading up to the family party organizing details. The gathering was at Aunt Karen's spacious house in the outer suburbs of Albuquerque, a place with a large backyard perfect for barbecues and games, though it always felt more like a stage for showing off than a real reunion. I arrived early to help set up, carrying a dish of homemade enchiladas to blend in my nerves, hidden behind a smile. As guests trickled in the air, filled with the sizzle of burgers on the grill, and kids running around, Danielle's little ones chasing butterflies, while Thomas chatted up Roger about some investment scheme. Pamela and Roger made their entrance first, Pamela in a flashy sundress, commenting on my casual look, as if it were a flaw, and Roger grumbling about traffic from their upscale neighborhood. "Lindsay, you should upgrade that car of yours," Pamela said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. I nodded politely, biting back a retort. Soon Dad and Susan arrived together for the kids' sake, Dad shaking hands stiffly with Roger while Mom hugged me briefly, asking about work in that surface-level way. Aunt Karen bustled around, directing everyone, her voice sharp as she critiqued the food setup. Emily hovered nearby, smiling sweetly and offering to help with plates, but I caught her glancing at my phone curiously. The party picked up as Mark and Danielle showed up with their family, Mark clapping Thomas on the back like old pals. Brandon Chen arrived unexpectedly. He'd been viewing my apartment earlier that week as a potential buyer, and Christina had suggested inviting him for a casual network, though I hadn't expected him to come. Brandon, a 32-year-old real estate flipper with an easy charm, started talking to Emily about property values, and she flirted openly, laughing at his jokes, while Mark shot jealous glances from across the yard. Roger even joined in, ribbing Mark about competition, escalating the tension with his own competitive streak. As the sun dipped lower, I pulled Danielle aside near the picnic table, away from the main group. "Hey sis, I have to tell you something huge. I just won a $1 million ticket," I whispered, showing her the fake slip. Her eyes lit up like fireworks and she grabbed it, muttering, "No way, let me see that closer." Before I could react, she slipped it into her pocket and vanished into the house, saying she needed the bathroom. I waited, pretending to mingle, but my stomach twisted as minutes passed. Emily approached, then acting concerned. "You okay? You look distracted." I brushed it off, but later I'd learned she texted Aunt Karen and Pamela right away, spilling what she'd overheard. The party wound down amid awkward goodbyes, with me faking worry about losing the ticket to gauge reactions. Dad patted my shoulder, saying, "If it's gone, it's a lesson in caution," while Mom suggested checking my purse again. Pamela smirked. Sounds careless. And Roger chuckled. Better luck next time. Brandon pulled me aside, briefly mentioning, Hey, when I looked at your place, I saw some old family papers in the attic, stuff about debts from your dad. Thought you should know. His words hit like a punch, confirming suspicions about the hidden inheritance, but I thanked him quietly as he left. Driving home, my phone buzzed. It was Mark, his voice booming with that forced, hearty laugh. Lindsay heard about your big win from Danielle. If you don't split it with us, say half for the family, I'll just throw it away, for fun. The threat hung there, laced with greed, his jealousy over Emily's flirting with Brandon bubbling under. I smiled into the empty car and hung up, knowing the ticket was worthless paper. But the betrayal stung deeper than expected, especially with Emily's role in spreading the word and Pamela's quick judgment. As the city lights of Albuquerque flickered by, I realized this was just the beginning. Their actions had sealed my resolve to push the test further, uncovering layers of deceit I hadn't fully anticipated. The morning after the party, my phone was a war zone. 30 missed calls, half from Danielle, a few from Mark, even one from Aunt Karen, all before 7 a.m. Voicemails piled up, Danielle's voice frantic. Lindsay, where's the ticket? Did you find it? And Mark's smug. Call me back, we need to talk about that million. I ignored them, my resolve hardening as I sipped coffee in my quiet Albuquerque apartment, the fake ticket drama already exposing their greed. To push the test further, I crafted a new story. The ticket was stolen, leaving me desperate for $4,000 to cover rent and medical bills from a recent health scare. I sent texts to the family voice, trembling in crafted distress, and waited to see who'd step up. First, I called Dad. He picked up on the second ring, his tone already lecturing. Lindsay, I heard about the ticket mess from Karen. This is why I always said to be careful with valuables. I explained the theft and my need for $4,000, mentioning hospital tests for chest pains. He sighed heavily, slipping into his engineer logic. You should have had a safety net. I warned you about living paycheck to paycheck. Then, unprompted, he let slip. Your grandma's inheritance was supposed to be that safety net, but it got complicated. My heart stopped. Brian Kelly had helped me dig into old records after Brandon's attic hint, confirming Dad hid Grandma's $20,000 bequest for his own projects. Dad? What do you mean complicated? I pressed, voice sharp. He stammered. It was for family investments. Lindsay, not personal use, but his defensiveness gave him away. The call ended with him promising to think about helping, but no commitment. Next was Mom. She answered distractedly mid-conversation with Roger. Oh, Lindsay, Danielle told me about the ticket chaos. That's awful. I laid out the same story, but she cut me off. Have you asked your dad? Roger and I just sank money into the boutique's expansion. When I mentioned the inheritance, her voice tightened. What are you implying? That money was handled years ago. But her quick denial and shaky tone betrayed her. She knew about Dad's scheme and covered it. She promised to check with Roger but suggested I try Thomas instead, passing the buck like always. Thomas was predictable. I texted him the story and he replied instantly, Sis, that sucks, I'll see what I can do. But days passed with no follow-up, his usual ghosting tactic after empty promises. I left voicemails, but they went unanswered, just like the $3,000 I'd lent him last year. Aunt Karen was worse. Her call was a lecture. Lindsay, Emily told me you were careless with that ticket. I always said teaching wasn't stable. When I asked for help, she scoffed. You should have taken a corporate job like I suggested. Later, I found a text from Emily to Aunt Karen sent during the party detailing my win and mocking my distress. She'd played the loyal cousin while feeding Karen ammo to judge me. Danielle and Mark were a united front of refusal. Mark texted, We can't help kids' school fees are killing us. Danielle called later, voice syrupy with fake sympathy. Lindsay, I'm so sorry about the ticket. Maybe it'll turn up. We're tight with the new house. Their rejection stung, especially after Mark's threat to toss the fake ticket and Danielle's grab and run at the party. Pamela and Roger were blunt in their group text reply. "Sorry, Lindsay, we don't have spare cash for your mistakes. Maybe downsize that apartment." Their dismissal echoed Pamela's snide party comments, and Roger's mention of mistakes felt like a jab at my entire life. As the week unfolded, I jotted their responses in a notebook, each one a fresh cut. Brian, who'd been texting to check on me, offered to dig deeper into Dad's financial records, confirming the inheritance was funneled into a failed business venture with Pamela's input. The family's excuses, deflections, and outright lies piled up, but the real blow was Emily's betrayal. Her texts proved she'd orchestrated the gossip to curry favor with Aunt Karen. As I stared at my phone, notifications still buzzing from Danielle's desperate follow-ups about the lost ticket, I knew the next call would either break me or show me who my real family was. By the end of that week, the sting of my family's responses, or lack thereof, had left me drained, my notebook filled with their excuses and betrayals. I was about to call Aunt Diane Moore, the one person I hadn't reached out to yet, when my phone buzzed with her name. "Lindsay, honey, I just heard from Susan about your trouble with that ticket." She said, her voice warm with worry despite her own struggles. Aunt Diane, a retired librarian living on a meager pension in a small Albuquerque condo, had been battling heart issues for years, yet she was the first to check on me without prompting. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Her concern, so genuine, cracked something in me. I met her the next day at a quiet diner near her place, a spot with worn booths and the smell of fresh coffee. She looked tired, her gray hair tied back, wearing a simple sweater with a mismatched scarf, but her smile was bright as she hugged me tightly. Over pancakes, I spilled the fake story about the stolen ticket and needing $4,000 for rent and medical bills. Without hesitation, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is $2,500, she said, sliding it across the table. "It's most of what I've saved, but it should help with rent. Don't worry about paying it back until you're steady." I stared at the envelope, stunned. She was scraping by her meds, eating up her budget, yet she gave without a second thought. The weight of her kindness hit hard, and I couldn't keep up the lie. "Aunt Diane, I need to tell you the truth," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't lose a ticket. I won $50 million in the lottery last week. The $1 million ticket was fake, a test to see who'd show up for me." Her eyes widened, but she stayed quiet, letting me continue. "I've been burned so many times by family, I had to know who cared. You're the only one who did without even knowing the stakes." Tears welled up as I told her about the party, Danielle's theft, Mark's threat, Emily's gossip to Aunt Karen, and the others' cold refusals. Then Aunt Diane leaned forward, her expression somber. "Lindsay, there's something you should know about your family." She took a deep breath. "Your grandma left an inheritance, $20,000, meant for you and your siblings. James redirected it to a business deal with Pamela, claiming it was for family benefit. Susan knew but kept quiet to avoid conflict with Roger. I tried to speak up, but they shut me out." Her words confirmed what Brian's research and Brandon's attic find had hinted at, and the betrayal cut deeper, knowing it was deliberate. "I never told you because I didn't want to tear the family apart," she added, squeezing my hand. "But you deserve the truth." I hugged her, tears streaming, overwhelmed by her selflessness and the clarity her words brought. "I'm going to help you," I said. "Your medical bill's a better place to live, whatever you need." She shook her head gently, but I insisted, already picturing a small, accessible home near mine and a fund to cover her treatments. As we left the diner, her arm linked with mine, I felt a resolve solidify. The family's lies, Danielle's greed, Emily's duplicity, James and Susan's cover-up had shown me who they were. Aunt Diane was my true family, and I'd cut everyone else out for good, no looking back. The weight of that decision felt heavy but right, like shedding a burden I'd carried too long. A year after that pivotal week, my life in Albuquerque was unrecognizable. I'd moved into a modest but cozy home in a quiet suburb with a small garden, where I'd sip coffee each morning, no longer checking my bank account with dread. The $50 million safely tucked into a blind trust managed by David Cole gave me freedom I'd never known, but it was the clarity from Aunt Diane's honesty that reshaped everything. I'd blocked every family member who'd failed my test: Danielle, Mark, Thomas, James, Susan, Aunt Karen, Emily, Pamela, Roger. No calls, no texts, no exceptions. When Thomas messaged about a new business venture needing $5,000 or Danielle complained about private school fees, I didn't respond. Their silence when I'd needed them echoed louder than their sudden pleas. With David's help, I set up a trust for Aunt Diane, covering her medical bills and buying her a single-story house nearby with wide doorways for her heart-related mobility issues. Her health improved, her smile brighter as she tended a small herb garden. "You didn't have to do this, Lindsay," she'd say during our weekly dinners, but I knew she deserved every bit of it. Inspired by her, I founded a nonprofit focused on supporting low-income teachers and elderly folks living alone, providing grants for bills and home repairs. Christina joined as program coordinator, her nursing skills perfect for outreach, while Brian Kelly volunteered, his crush long faded into friendship. Brandon Chen, who'd tipped me off about the family papers, helped manage the nonprofit's real estate needs, his insights proving invaluable. Even John Adams, the corner store owner, pitched in, sharing stories of his own family's struggles to guide our mission. The nonprofit grew fast, helping over 150 people in its first year, teachers like me, who'd lived paycheck to paycheck, seniors like Aunt Diane, who'd been forgotten by their own. We'd sit on my porch, Christina, Aunt Diane, and I, planning fundraisers over wine, laughing in a way I'd never done with my blood family. The work filled a void I hadn't realized was there, replacing the constant anxiety of pleasing people who never valued me. My old life, scrimping on groceries, dodging family demands, felt like a distant memory. Cutting off my family wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The truth about the inheritance, James funneling Grandma's $20,000 into his failed ventures with Pamela Susan's complicity to keep peace with Roger, had shattered any lingering hope. Danielle's theft of the fake ticket, Mark's greedy threat, Emily's betrayal through texts to Aunt Karen, and the collective dismissal of my plea for $4,000 showed their priorities. They didn't deserve a place in my new life, and I refused to play their game of half-hearted apologies or fake concern. When James had a car accident and faced repair costs, I didn't step in. When Danielle texted about a family reunion, I left it unread. My peace was worth more than their validation. Looking back, the money didn't change who I was, it revealed who they were. It taught me that family isn't blood. It's the people who show up without expecting a payout. Aunt Diane, with her $2,500 and her painful truth about the inheritance, gave me more than millions could. She showed me love doesn't keep a ledger. I learned to walk away from toxic ties, to build a life on my terms, and to find purpose in helping others who'd been overlooked. If you're listening, ask yourself who's there for you when you have nothing to give. Those are your people. Don't waste energy on those who only see you as a means to an end. Thank you for hearing my story. If it hit home, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment below, sharing your own experiences with loyalty tests or family betrayals. I'd love to hear how you've navigated those tough moments and found your true circle.
The furniture. I stood in the corner of the bridal suite, holding the veil I had paid for, watching as my sister laughed with her bridesmaids, sipping champagne like she'd earned all of this with something other than entitlement. "Can someone give me that diamond-studded clutch Mom bought?" Lily called out. "I want it in the photos." Mom smiled, handed it over, then turned toward me and paused. Then, she leaned in close to one of the bridesmaids and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "It's her day. Don't ruin it with your face." Laughter. From the bridesmaid, from Lily, and from my mother. I looked at my dad, standing nearby, adjusting his tie. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away. No defense. No apology. Just silence. It stung more than I expected. I had funded this entire wedding, paid for the venue, the dress, the flowers, Even the custom calligraphy signs scattered around the reception hall with quotes Lily stole from Pinterest. And now, apparently, my face was the only unwelcome thing in the room. I placed the veil gently on the table and stepped out of the room. No one stopped me. I walked past rows of imported roses, past the reception setup, past the outdoor seating arranged for 200 guests, each chair a line item on my credit card bill. As I stood outside under the warm sun, the air hit me with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I thought about every time they used me, every time I was the helpful one, the dependable one, the one who understood the bigger picture. I thought about the late nights working overtime to cover expenses that weren't mine. I thought about the tears I swallowed because family comes first. And then I pulled out my phone. I opened the email app, searched vendor contracts. One by one, I started typing. Subject: cancellation urgent. I'm writing to cancel the services scheduled for tomorrow due to a sudden family emergency. I sent the first, then the second, then the third.
Cake. Gone.
Caterers.
Gone.
DJ.
Gone. Seating. Gone.
Photographer. Cancelled. All gone. By the time I finished, the sun had dipped slightly, casting long shadows across the perfectly arranged rows of nothing. They wouldn't know until tomorrow, when the guests showed up to locked gates, when the groom stood in confusion, when Lily screamed into a void that no longer owed her a thing. They thought I'd just swallow the humiliation. Instead, I made a few phone calls. My name is Anna Blake, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because when you treat the person funding your dreams like a burden, don't be surprised when the lights go out. It didn't start with the wedding. It started years ago, when I was 12 and Lily was 10, back when Mom handed her a $10 bill for a school field trip and turned to me and said, "You're older. You'll understand if we can't do both." I never asked again. That was the dynamic. Lily sparkled. I stabilized. When she broke things, I cleaned them. When she cried, I was expected to hush and make space. When she failed a test, it was stress from trying too hard. When I aced mine, it was met with a distracted good. Now go help your sister. She had dance recitals with sequined costumes and flowers. I had science fairs with stapled poster boards and no one in the audience. They adored her. She was their pride, the beautiful one, the charmer. I was the one who made life easier. I got my first job at 16 and paid for my own prom dress. Lily got her prom fully sponsored. Hair, nails, dress, limo. When I got accepted into college, I was told I'd need student loans. When Lily failed out of her first semester, Dad co-signed her a second chance at a private school. By 25, I was managing 2 jobs and renting a 1-bedroom apartment. Lily was still at home, figuring things out, spending weekends getting drunk and scrolling bridal Pinterest boards. So when she got engaged, I should have known. They invited me over for dinner. Not to celebrate, but to present the pitch. "Just a little help," Mom said sweetly. "We don't want her to feel stressed about money during her big moment." Lily didn't even look at me when she added, "You're good at money stuff anyway." I should have said no. I should have reminded them that I was still paying off student debt. But then Dad said the line that always got me. "Come on, Anna. You've always been the one we can count on." And just like that, I became the bank. I wrote the checks. I filled the spreadsheets. I called vendors, paid deposits, rented decor Lily never said thank you for. But something in me kept whispering, maybe this time, they'll see what you're worth. Maybe this is the moment you finally earn a seat at the table. They never even saved me a seat at the rehearsal dinner. So when they insulted me in the bridal suite, when my own mother said, "Don't ruin it with your face," I realized something. It wasn't just disrespect. It was recognition. They saw me for what I was to them. Not a daughter. Not a sister. Just a wallet with legs. And I was done being their silent investor. The days leading up to the wedding felt like a slow public execution. Except I wasn't the bride. I was the invisible benefactor. Every group text, every email, every decision about the wedding excluded me, except when it came to paying. The dress? "Anna, can you transfer $2,400 to the boutique today?" The custom floral arch? Lily says this one's perfect. Can you book it by Friday? The menu tasting? I wasn't even invited. And every time I offered an opinion on table settings, guest list, even the song she'd walk down the aisle to, I was shut down. That's not really your role, Mom said once. What do you know about weddings? Lily snapped another time. Dad? Silent like always. The rehearsal dinner was the final insult in a long string of cuts. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed nicely but modestly, with a small gift for Lily and her fiancé. I wasn't looking to be praised, just included. The hostess checked her list. Anna Blake? Oh, you're not on the seating chart. Not on the list. They had forgotten or chosen not to save me a seat. I stood at the edge of the restaurant while waiters buzzed around me. Guests hugged and took selfies, and my sister laughed at a table full of glittering glasses and smiling faces. Mom finally noticed me, frowned, and said, Well, you can sit at the back. We weren't sure if you were actually coming. Coming? I paid for the whole damn dinner. I sat next to the DJ's speaker, chewing dry bread and watching them celebrate like royalty. After dessert, I stood up, took a deep breath, and raised a glass. Could I say something? Lily's face fell. Mom looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. Still, I smiled. I just wanted to say. Lily cut in, laughing. Oh no. Is this the part where she makes it about herself? The table roared with laughter. Even Dad chuckled. And that's when something in me, something small and quiet, snapped like a thread pulled too tight for too long. I lowered the glass and nodded. You're right. Then I walked out. No one followed. No one called. The next day, I sent one final transfer to the venue to cover the balance. Then I logged into the vendor portal, logged out every planner, every parent, every name that had dismissed me. This parade of humiliation they'd paraded me through, it was almost over. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. But I was going to end it. They thought I was sulking. After I walked out of the rehearsal dinner, no one reached out. No apology. No text. Not even a guilt-laced voicemail. I imagine they thought I'd come back quietly, like always. That I'd show up to the ceremony in something understated, hand over another check, and smile in the background of 100 photos I didn't belong in. They forgot what happens when the one holding the strings decides to let go. The next morning, I woke up early.
Calm. Precise.
I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder labeled Lily's Wedding, Master Contracts. Everything was there. Every deposit I'd made. Every service I'd secured. Every vendor I'd negotiated with while they drank mimosas and called me reliable. I started with the caterer. Subject line: Urgent, family emergency cancellation. Refund requested. Service canceled. Then the florist. The DJ. The rental company for the chairs and tables. The decor team. The photographer. The lighting crew. Each cancellation carefully worded, every refund redirected to my personal account. Most offered partial returns. A few were non-refundable. I didn't care. I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it for the girl who sat at every birthday party alone while her sister blew out the candles. For the woman who paid for everything but wasn't allowed a seat at the table. For the silence my dad offered as loyalty. For the cruelty my mom wrapped in smiles. Each email I sent felt like lifting a weight off my chest. And the best part? None of them knew. They were too busy rehearsing poses and picking champagne flutes. Mom posted a selfie with Lily that afternoon. My beautiful baby girl. Tomorrow is your day, ring crown. She was right. It would be Lily's day. Just not the one she was expecting. By late afternoon, I had contacted the venue. It was under my name. Fully paid. I told them the event was no longer authorized to proceed. Do you want to notify the client? The manager asked. I smiled.
No.
Let them find out like I found out everything else. Too late to change it. Then I logged out of every account. Deleted the shared wedding calendar. Removed myself from the group chat titled Queen Lily's Big Day 2 Hearts. They wanted me silent. Invisible. They didn't know that silence could move like a blade. They didn't know that invisibility is what makes the best revenge undetectable until it's too late. The morning of the wedding arrived with the kind of sunshine people write poems about. I imagine Lily woke up feeling like royalty, hair wrapped, makeup booked, dress steamed and waiting. Maybe she even made a post. Can't believe I'm marrying my soulmate today, smiling face with heart eyes ring #bride vibes only. Meanwhile, I sipped coffee on my balcony 2 towns over.
Calm.
Not bitter. Not angry. Just done. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. sharp at a rustic vineyard venue, one with vintage doors, an ivy-covered gazebo, and delicate gold chairs arranged like something out of a bridal magazine. Except when the guests arrived, the gates were locked. No flowers. No music. No champagne. No sign of life. Just silence. Cars lined up. Confusion spread like a fog. People checked invitation times, peeked through the iron fence, and tried calling anyone who would answer. Lily's best friend posted a story on Instagram. Is this a prank or? At 3:40 p.m., the photographer texted Lily saying, "Hey, I got a cancellation notice yesterday. Was that legit?" Lily laughed it off until she couldn't. By 4:15, panic set in. Lily showed up in full gown, clutching her bouquet like a weapon. She screamed at the gates. Mom tried calling the venue. The voicemail said the reservation had been canceled due to unforeseen family emergency. Dad just stood there, blinking, finally realizing that silence doesn't fix everything. Then someone said, "Wait, wasn't Anna the one who booked everything?" A few guests turned to look at Mom, then at Lily, then at the empty parking lot where the catering van should have been. Phones started ringing. Whispered conversations broke out. Was this intentional? Who was handling the logistics? I thought she paid for all of it. Lily called me 6 times. I let it ring. Then came the text. What did you do? You ruined my wedding. You psycho. I muted her. They weren't locked out of a wedding. They were locked out of the fantasy they'd built on my back. And now they were face to face with reality. One I had quietly dismantled with nothing more than truth and timing. At 6:23 p.m., my phone lit up again. A new message from Mom. We gave you everything. You owe us. You went too far. I read it. Then I deleted it. Because here's what they never understood. You don't get to spit on the hand that builds your kingdom and still expect the crown. They never noticed the person holding the strings. Until she let go. They scrambled. But it was already too late. You can't throw a royal wedding without food, music, or chairs. Some guests waited, expecting a miracle. Others left after an hour, confused and gossiping. A few whispered, I heard her sister was paying for everything. And wasn't there drama at the rehearsal dinner? By 7 p.m., the story had spread. Not just among guests, but through our extended family. Cousins were texting each other screenshots. A neighbor posted a photo of the locked venue gates with a caption. When your wedding is built on someone else's silence, expect it to collapse loudly. I didn't say a word, didn't post, didn't defend. Lily, on the other hand, was unraveling. She posted a long Instagram story, tear-streaked, screaming about betrayal, how her jealous sister sabotaged the happiest day of her life. Her fiancé stood behind her, quiet and visibly shaken. Because now he knew, none of what they had was real. Not the venue, not the cake, not the illusion of control. It had all been bought with someone else's name. Mine. Then came Lily's text to me that night. You embarrassed this family. I hope you're proud of yourself. I didn't respond, because I was proud, not of the chaos, but of the clarity. The next day, my phone buzzed again, this time from my Aunt Carla. She never picked sides. Until now. Her message read, I heard what happened. For the record, I always knew they used you. Good for you, for walking away. More came in. Quiet affirmations from cousins, old friends, even Lily's ex-roommate who wrote, took guts. Wish I had done the same with my family. Meanwhile, my parents went on defense mode. Mom called every family member she could, twisting the story. She just snapped. She's mentally unstable. We've always supported her. But it didn't stick. Because the truth had receipts, literally. Every vendor had confirmation of who paid. Every cancellation came with my signature. Every contract had my name. And suddenly, the silence I'd always been drowned out by became their curse. Dad stayed quiet, like he always did. Except this time, his silence didn't protect anyone. It exposed them. The image of our perfect family cracked, fast and loud. Lily tried to reschedule the wedding 2 months later. It was scaled down. A backyard ceremony with folding chairs and store-bought cupcakes. I wasn't invited. I didn't want to be. Because their collapse didn't need an audience. It was enough to know they felt it. Every eye on them. Every whisper. Every question they didn't want to answer. And I never had to raise my voice. Peace is loud in its own way. After the dust settled, after the social media rants dried up and the group chats went quiet, I did something no one expected. I lived. Not out of spite, not to prove anything, just because it was finally time. I moved out of the apartment I had been clinging to like an obligation. Found a sunlit place near the water. Quiet, simple, and entirely mine. Claire, my cat, took exactly 1 day to claim the windowsill as her throne. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to stop mistaking survival for strength. The first few sessions hurt like hell. Unpacking years of being the reliable one, the good daughter, the bank with a beating heart. But over time, I found myself sitting taller, breathing easier, laughing. I had never realized how much space guilt took up in my body until I let it go. And for the first time in years, I had money. Not because I earned more, but because I wasn't bleeding it into people who mistook my kindness for a resource. I traveled. I took a cooking class in Barcelona, learned how to make pasta from scratch in a village outside Florence. I danced with strangers, sat in cafes alone without feeling lonely. One night, in Lisbon, I met a man. No grand sparks, no declarations, just calm energy and eyes that saw me, not what I could give. He asked what I did for a living. I told him, I teach women how to protect their wallets from people who say it's just family. Because I had turned my story into something bigger. I started a platform. Burn the blank check. Workshops, writing, coaching. Helping women like me say no, set boundaries, and take themselves off the payroll of obligation. It spread faster than I expected. Apparently, I wasn't alone. One day, a woman came up to me after a seminar. Maybe late 40s. She hugged me with shaking arms and said, I left my sister's life last month. She still doesn't know why. But I do. You gave me the words. I didn't cry. I just held her. Because this was what I had been missing all those years. Not approval, not thanks, but purpose. A friend once asked if I'd ever speak to my family again. I said, I'm not mad. I'm just not available. Because I wasn't carrying their weight anymore. I was building something of my own. A life not built on guilt, but on choice. I never dreamed of a big wedding. Not because I didn't believe in love, but because I'd seen what happened when a celebration became a spectacle. When love was measured in flower walls and open bars. When the people clapping for you were the same ones who didn't care if you cried behind closed doors. So when it happened, when someone asked me and I said yes, I didn't plan a wedding. I planned a promise. It was just 12 of us. A quiet ceremony in a coastal town, on a cliff that overlooked the sea. No DJ. No seating chart. No fake smiles. Just wind, sun, soft music, and people who showed up because they loved me, not because I paid for their plate. I wore a simple dress. Bare feet. No veil. Claire was my maid of honor. Older now, but still sharp as ever. She wore gold sandals and carried wildflowers she picked herself. We didn't send out announcements. No hashtags. No live streams. We didn't need to prove anything. After the ceremony, I wrote one postcard. No return address. No note inside. Just a photograph of me and Claire, barefoot and smiling, arms around each other, the ocean behind us and light in our eyes. I mailed it to my parents' house. addressed to both of them. On the back, it said, "This time, no one had to pay for love." I don't know what they did with it. Maybe they tore it up. Maybe they threw it in a drawer. Maybe they stared at it for a long time, wondering when they lost control. But I do know this. They missed the only wedding that mattered. Not because I didn't invite them, but because they taught me what love shouldn't feel like. As I stood with my new husband watching the waves crash below, I didn't think about revenge. I thought about freedom, and how long it took to feel like I was allowed to have it, because they planned a perfect day once, and forgot who paid for it. I simply reminded them, with silence, with strength, with the life they never expected me to build. And as Claire ran down the beach, laughing, kicking up water with wild joy, I smiled and whispered to myself, "They came for control. I left with peace." Because, in the end, some people want the spotlight, others build the stage. And me? I burned the script and wrote a better ending.